that you want to share with us to get us all up to speed, inshallah? Any takeaways? Yes, mashallah.
The importance of being selfless.
Mm.
The importance of being selfless and thinking about, I remember there was one brother that was talking about seeking to understand before being understood,
Mm.
which is one of the most important principles. Like the Prophet ﷺ sought to understand before, when he gave dawah, he was being the people were receptive.
Alhamdulillah.
Even with our relationship, we need to seek our to understand when we're listening to our spouse. Being selfless, don't put your ego to the side, our desire to the side, and that's one of the most important things.
Alhamdulillah. Being selfless in marriage, mashallah. Any other takeaways? One takeaway I had, mashallah, was when Sheikh Ubaidullah Evans was talking about the purpose of marriage, right? A lot of people say, oh, it's to have children, it's to be happy, it's to be XYZ. But mashallah, he talked about the purpose of marriage is to find sakina, to find tranquility. And so that was a really big shift and a different framing of how we should view marriage. And with that, I'd like to introduce our sister, mashallah, Amany Suleiman. Jazakallah khair for coming. Really appreciate you taking the time out, obviously on a weeknight. I'm sure there's a lot going on in your life, but you took out the time to come and enlighten us, mashallah. And so with that, I'd just like to ask you maybe a little bit about your background and how that kind of relates to our topic today about marriage.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Jazakallah khair for having me. I love ICW. I actually have not come inside the masjid before, but I love it for the carnivals you guys have on Eid. So my children have enjoyed those, alhamdulillah. A little bit about my background. I'm a life coach. I also studied biology at UIC back in 1826. I got into life coaching because I'm obsessed with psychology, and I love using psychology to understand myself, others, and then connecting it to our Islamic traditions. So I have two different certifications in life coaching. One is kind of a general life coaching certification, and the other one is through Mars Venus coaching. How many of you guys are familiar? Our men are from Mars, women are from Venus, the book. So this is the certification of John Gray, the one who wrote the book, and it talks heavily about the difference between men and women, how they function, how they stress differently, and how they relax differently, what their needs are and how those needs are different. And it's really beautiful because I remember when I was studying and in this program, I was taking a lot of things home with me. And I was like, oh, that's why my husband looks like he cannot pay attention to me when he comes home, because he needs to replenish. He needs a little bit of time to himself with silence or doing whatever it is that he's doing without me coming to him and talking about my day. And then I can talk about my day. And then I can go into my whatever it is that women need when their husband comes home from work. So, I was able to adjust things, and I was able to talk to my husband about it. And those little adjustments, they make such a huge difference in the trajectory of your marriage, because it's like a little. I love this analogy that Tony Robbins uses, where he says, like, I'm not a golfer. I think it's boring. I'm sorry for those of you who love it and you're like, it's amazing. It's a real sport. That's fine. But I don't understand it. I don't get it. Whatever. But it's a great analogy. And he says that when you hit a ball, okay, if you just adjust the, what is it called, the stick thing?
The club?
The club. If you adjust the club just a little bit, the ball is going to end up in a completely different place. And so similarly, with everything in life, if you adjust any step you're taking, it's going to have you end up somewhere specific in 20 years, in 10 years. And marriage is no different. All these little things that we can adjust along the way to make them a little bit better make a huge impact in the future and in your present, first of all, but also in the future. And of course, it impacts your children and your household and things like that.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah. And I realized, MashaAllah, we went to UIC, we may have missed each other, but alhamdulillah, that was a very transformative experience in my life, just seeing the MSA and being around brothers and sisters. And so, mashallah, to hear that you came from the same place and kind of experienced the same things that I experienced with, mashallah, the khatibs that we had and the MSA that we had, the lounge and everything like that. So, alhamdulillah, that's something very special that we share, mashallah. And so to kind of tie this topic with the last topic, I'd like to get your insights and your opinion on what is the purpose of marriage.
So I love what Sheikh Ubaidullah Evans said, and I'm going to piggyback on that, which is it's peace, it's serenity. And it's interesting because honestly, I don't think it's because we've all watched too many Disney movies and romantic comedies, astaghfirullah al-azim, but like, I don't think it's because of that we have this image that the person we marry is going to save us from our parents, save us from our culture, save us from ourselves. I think it's something natural inside of us that we want to be saved, we want to be helped, we want to be loved, we want to be seen. But of course, we know, like, once reality hits, that no one can save us from our internal selves except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can carry us for real except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that peace that we want in our marriages starts with each and every single one of us. So the point of marriage is to find peace. And a lot of times people who are married, if you ask them this, they'll be like, go talk to her, or go talk to him, right? They're blaming the other side for the lack of peace in the household. But it takes two to tango, right? Let's say it takes two to make jama'ah. Let's do it that way. So, right? So everyone is always contributing. Everybody, each and every single one of us. Even the person in the relationship that doesn't seem as crazy, right? If you notice people who are having a difficult time and now family is coming in, or people are going through divorce, I've heard this so many times. If it's the guy's side, she's crazy. And they're like, no, really, she's crazy. She needs to be institutionalized, right? And the other side is saying the same thing about the guy. And in my mind, I'm like, both of them came to this point together. No matter what, no matter what. Sometimes more comes from one side than the other, but we all contribute. So the purpose of marriage is to find that sakina. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that same ayah that is pulled from, right? Surah Ar-Rum, Surah 30, I think it's ayah 21, the wedding verse, right? Inshallah, you guys will all be able to put on your cards soon, Ya Rab. Say Ameen.
Ameen.
Inshallah. So the ayah tells us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم what? مودة ورحمة. So in marriage, part of the purpose of marriage is to experience with that peace, mawadda, a deep, deep love, an extreme love, and rahmah. That love is there. It's that romantic love that everybody wants and everybody needs and everybody deserves, right? Allah created us this way. And then you have the rahmah, where the love, you're not feeling it that too much because he said something stupid, she said something hurtful, someone's mad at somebody, but the rahmah kicks in, right? That rahmah is like that need to care for the other person. The need to be like, I'm concerned about you. You had a flat tire? Okay, I'm leaving work right now and I'm coming. I have a job tomorrow. Can you make my lunch? Absolutely, I got you. This sense, this need to take care of each other. So another part of that, subhanAllah, if you think about how when we come into this world, we don't come alone. We leave alone. We meet Allah alone. We have to answer to Him alone. None of our excuses there, I have daddy issues, mommy issues, this or that. None of it's going to be like, oh, that's why you were horrible to this person, right? I'm not playing down mommy, daddy issues. Please go to therapy for that. I encourage you, okay? I'm not making fun of that. But when we meet Allah, we have to come with like, this is what I did and here's what I did. But that's all by ourselves. But when we come into this world, we come in automatically with two human beings in our lives who are obsessed with us. No matter how much of an alien you look like, they're like, MashaAllah, look at my beautiful baby. And everyone's like, oh, they'll grow up, inshallah. That'll fix itself, right? So they love us, right? And no matter how funky some of our families are, no matter how much trauma some of our families have blessed us with, they love us, right? And they are obsessed with us in a certain way. And what does Allah have happen to us? As we get older and our parents get older, we are transferred over to somebody, to a husband or to a wife, who will love and care for us like our parents, if not more in some ways, right? And of course, there's, intimacy is a different type of love and connection. So parents can't offer that, obviously, right? So it's interesting that Allah created this cycle so that you always have someone to be obsessed with you as much as you are with yourself. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We all are taking care of ourselves. And now Allah partners you up with someone who will take care of you as much as you need them to. And what's beautiful about this connection, this togetherness, is He puts these opposite energies, and not energy like in a weird way, like, oh, the universe is talking to me, not that kind, just like two types, a masculine energy and a feminine energy that complete each other. That together, when used properly and responsibly, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I think that's where a lot of times the clashes happen, right? And I encourage all of you, married or not, there's this amazing book by John Gray called Mars and Venus Collide. It's one of the books he wrote. It's so amazing what it can teach you. Teach men how to understand women better, and teach women how to understand men better. And then how to understand yourself so you could ask for what you need on both sides. It's a beautiful thing because we always talk about communication, but it's like, but what if you don't know what you even want? What if you don't understand what the other person wants and they can't communicate it? And one thing I love that he always points out, John Gray, is women will give to men like women need it. And men will give to women the way men need it, right? And that's why there's a lot of frustration. But if women can learn what men need in terms of if they're frustrated, if they're, what kind of appreciation they need, what kind of whatever, all the things that they need, and men can understand what women need in the form that they need it, and then you could offer that, imagine the harmony that can create in a home.
SubhanAllah. And so as we turn to the topic of what to look for in a spouse, and before we talk about what you should look for in a spouse, I guess the question is, in the modern day, what are men and women typically looking for in a spouse? Whether that's right or wrong, but what is something that men are looking for, and what is something that women are looking for in a spouse?
I'm not really in tune a lot with what people who are single are looking for. I've heard complaints about the problems that are arising from people who are still, looking to get married. And I mean, a lot of it's wonderful. And of course, I'm always comparing to the 90s and early 2000s when my people were getting married, and like my generation. It's so different, right? It's so different. Some of it's better and some of it's harder. Really, some of it is very, very difficult, and some of it's amazing. There's more open-mindedness. There's less of this, are you from the same town as them? Because otherwise, we're not even talking, right? All that, right? Alhamdulillah, people are marrying no matter what the race is, no matter culturally what's going on. I love that. That's amazing. And that's, subhanAllah, one of the first things I asked my husband when I met him. I said, will you have a problem with your daughter marrying someone who's not Arab? And he said, no, I'm okay with that. I said, check. Because I'm not dealing with that in 20 years. I'm not. We're done with this, right? So, subhanAllah, I think a few of the things, and maybe this, if you don't mind if I just jump into.
Let's go.
Yeah. I know, so one of the aspects is, I know the apps can be very challenging. And I know they're good in some ways again, and then some ways are challenging. I'm not going to focus on the positive, even though I'm a life coach. I'm just going to focus on the negative real quick. Why? Because I want to talk about solutions, all right? So I know in terms of, sorry, let me pull back a little bit. The first thing that's so important, and again, we always look at the hadith, always look at, the ayat, of all the guidance from Allah and the Prophet ﷺ is number one. And I know you guys talked about the hadith where marry a woman for 4 things, right? What's the first one?
No, that's actually today's topic.
Oh, we didn't talk about it at all?
No,
Okay,
not
it was
yet.
in your notes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's for
The
today,
notes were
alhamdulillah.
amazing, by the way, so I appreciate it. What did the Prophet ﷺ encourage
Sallallahu
people
alaihi
to
wasallam.
marry women for? Number 1, their wealth. Number 2, their status. Number 3, their beauty. And number 4, their religion. And then by the end of the hadith it says, and hold on to the woman who has religion. Otherwise, you'll be at loss, right? You'll be a loser. It's really interesting because you could easily be like, okay, they gotta just be religious. They gotta be religious. Okay, they go to the masjid, they pray like 17 times a day. They, the guy wears hijab. He's so religious, he wears hijab, right? Okay, the sister wears hijab. All the things that check off. And then, of course, we get pressure from the family. What's wrong? Why no? Why no? He works, right? He's this, he's that. I remember my father told me at some point, because back then people just came to your house. They heard about you and they came to your house. So I was very open about who would come as long as they didn't like sell drugs or as long as
That's a pretty low bar.
yeah, as long as they didn't, as long as I knew like it was said that they prayed and they don't have like a haram business. It was very basic. Come, and the reason for that is not because I was willing to marry anyone. It was because I needed to talk to them myself. I wasn't, the description I was getting from people, I don't care what it was not enough. And what are the descriptions that sound exciting usually? MashaAllah, he's a doctor. MashaAllah, she's beautiful. MashaAllah, she's this. MashaAllah, he's that. It's superficial. It's all the stuff that's on the surface that has never saved a marriage. Never. Doctors have gotten divorced. Beautiful women have gotten cheated on, right? Look at Hollywood. If that was like a recipe for success, ain't no one getting cheated on in Hollywood, right? But they're stunning. And there's cheating, there's divorce without cheating, just, things don't work out. So what's the problem? So if you take a few steps back and look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He says, tell the believing men to lower their gaze, right? And guard their chastity. And tell the believing women to lower their gaze, guard their chastity, and cover their adornments, right? We have these laws, these guidelines in place for a reason. It's not just to protect you from committing zina. That's one thing. It's to protect you from connecting with another human being on an intimate level where you feel so connected with them that you could reach the level of zina. So what does that tell us about, okay, fine, I'm supposed to protect my eyes. I'm supposed to protect my eyes whether I'm looking at someone or what I'm watching, protect my ears from what I'm listening to, protect my thoughts from what I'm thinking about. So what happens when I'm actually looking to marry someone? It's funny because we have this whole set of rules that prevents us from now where it's halal to actually take a little bit of a step to connect with someone within boundaries. We prevent ourselves from doing that because we're focused on superficial things. So when people talk to each other for marriage, there's a little bit of a door that's open to connect without any inappropriateness, right? There's no physical, there's no flirting verbally, there's no excessive hanging out, there's no staying together alone or going out together alone. It's protected, but you're able and allowed to talk. And if you're talking, you're connecting, right? Are men allowed to see a woman without her hijab before they get married? They're not. One time. They're allowed to see her?
Oh.
No? Okay, never mind. That's a fiqhi thing. Never mind. Okay, ask Sheikh Ubaidullah Evans when he comes, inshallah, okay? Forget that I said that. I don't know. I thought it was okay, but okay, maybe not. I'm not sure. That was hilarious. He's like, no, haram. Okay, so leave that for the shuyukh. I don't know. Anyway, going back to this. The number one thing is ask yourself, how am I going to give myself and this person, this woman, this man, a chance to connect to see if we are, number one, compatible, and number two, attracted to each other. We think attraction is physical. It is not only physical, and it is almost barely physical. Attraction happens because of connection. Okay? It happens because of connection. If you look at two spouses, a husband and a wife who are mad at each other, there's no intimacy happening, right? And a lot of times people who are at the verge of divorce, they'll say we were sleeping in different rooms for months, right? Where's the attraction? There wasn't enough connection. There wasn't enough safety in that relationship, right? So, and this is my biggest problem with the apps is the photos. I don't have a problem with a photo, but people are beautiful. And when most 99% of the people on the app, you will love if you give them a chance because you are compatible with them once you get to know them. Pictures don't show personality. You guys ever feel this? And not just with marriage, but anything. When you see like a picture of somebody on a flyer or somewhere, and they're like, oh, this is my cousin. Your friend is showing you their cousin. And they're like, so they're going to be here next week. Come hang out with us. You see the picture. You go and meet the cousin, and now while they're talking, they look different. Their physical features look different, literally. So imagine if you're looking like, not my type, not my type, not my type. You know what your type is? Someone you can connect with. Someone who has enough value that overlaps with you. Someone you like, someone you can giggle with. And if you're more serious, someone who's going to be serious with you, right? Somebody who has a similar Islamic values. You guys are maybe in the same place. And sisters, be careful with, no, I need him to be more Islamic so he could pick me up. No, just whatever. If he's like you or a little bit less, that's okay too. It's okay. So give them and yourself a chance by talking to people. So if you're on apps, fantastic. Try to connect with 5 people who you're like, you know what, I didn't think so before, but based on like the description, this person could be compatible with me. And talk to them once, talk to them twice, talk to them 10 times. You don't feel it, then say, I'm sorry, this is not working. I pray the best for you. And that's okay. Is there heartbreak and difficulty? Absolutely. But it's more of a wholesome approach, and you're doing yourself a favor before you're doing the other person a favor. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like as an ummah, we have a marriage crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
I have too many friends who are still single, and it's been a while. And there's no shame in it. There's no shame at all. It makes me sad because people want to be married. People want to have their spouse. They want to be with them. You know, it's not easy. So, subhanAllah, I think that's the first thing is seek out compatibility. And that compatibility is attraction. Don't just look at a picture and decide not attracted, not my type. Even if they're not exactly what you wish for or dream for, talk to them. Not because love will come later, not even that whole argument. It's not that. It's that once you talk to them, they will look different to you, I guarantee it. Unless they won't, then you're probably not compatible to begin with. And say no. Kindly, respectfully, it's not working. I don't care if you talk for 3 months and you're like, I still don't feel it. It's okay. Your parents won't like that, so I apologize ahead of time. They're like, 2 weeks later, they're like, yalla, yalla. What are people gonna say?
When's the nikah? Yeah.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah. And this, as we're talking about compatibility, this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he mentions that a woman is married for 4 things: her wealth, her family status, her beauty, her religion. It's amazing how these 4 aspects actually lead to compatibility, right? When it comes to the end of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, so marry the religious woman or else you are a loser, it doesn't mean that we ignore the other 3 factors. Absolutely not, right? We don't want to ignore the wealth. We don't want to ignore the status. We don't want to ignore the beauty. But what we need to concentrate on is the religion. And so when it comes to compatibility, yes, there needs to be some compatibility when it comes to wealth. When it comes to the background that you come from, the background that this individual comes from, we have this idea that love is going to conquer all. But if your man is broke, it's very difficult, okay? when it comes to status. And I think a lot of the young ones of us, we don't really pay attention to status, but status is something that, again, it's not the most important thing, but it is something to consider, right? Because with status, and I guess status might not be the best translation, but maybe social circumstances or maybe class or something like that also has to be taken into consideration, because that also leads to different types of values, right? Because if a husband and a wife have different values, that's not going to necessarily lead to a successful relationship. And of course, beauty, right? We don't have to talk to the guys about beauty. But beauty is important. Of course, you need to be attracted to your spouse. And as Sister mentioned, that beauty isn't only exterior. That beauty is also internal. We need to make sure that when we're assessing beauty, that we're not just skin deep, that we're actually trying to get into the character, into the heart. And finally, before I hand it over, this thing about religion, I think we really need to double click, because when we think about religion, marry for religion, how does my wife praying 5 times a day benefit me? How does my wife fasting 30 days and praying tahajjud and all of that, how does that benefit me? Yes, that is the foundation. That is how you're going to build yourself to exude your character. So my argument or my position when it comes to look at the deen of the individual is, don't stop at the ritualistic aspects of marriage. Don't stop at the salah. Don't stop at the fasting. But really what we're talking about is look at their character. Are they generous? Can they control their anger? Can they treat the waiter properly? Do they hold the door open for you? Do they say salam properly to your parents? Do they keep their house clean? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about deen. The character, and as we were talking about before, marriage is the perfect test and the perfect building of your character. And so when it comes to what do you look for, we look for these 4 things, in particular religion. And when we're talking about religion, we're talking about character. We're talking about how this individual treats other people. And so, with this hadith, it is so comprehensive in what to look for. But I guess the question then is, how do we assess somebody's religion? How can we assess somebody's character in this short period of time, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months? We talk, maybe we're on the phone, and we have like these list of 100 questions that we send somebody, but how can we really understand somebody's deen and somebody's character?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think again, it's important to look beneath the surface. So the guy prays 5 times a day. The sister, memorizes Quran, or whatever it is that you were told that person is or does, whether it's by them or by the auntie who sent you or whoever. A lot of it is just practical engagement with that person. And, something like certain things, like, for example, for the sisters, if the guy is sitting with you and you guys are talking, you have your list of questions about marriage, and his mom calls, and he looks at his phone and he goes, oh, right? He's irritated. That's going to be you.
SubhanAllah.
When he's with his friends and you call. It is going to be you 100%. It's not like, oh, good, mother's out of the way, perfect. It will transfer, right? If he's responding that way, right? Same thing with the sisters. If the sister is responding to her sibling in a way that you don't like, that's going to be similar to how she's going to interact with your kids. By the way, a little bit of that stuff is okay. You're not going to find anyone perfect, right? So it's not like you're not going to be like, none of us are perfect. So I'm saying this about like how, the sister might interact with her kids, and I'm thinking about the times I'm not very proud of how I act with my kids, right? So we also have to be careful that we're not like checking everything. We're not looking for perfection, but it has to be something you're willing to work with. It has to be something that is, these are issues that I'm comfortable having with this person if they're there, because they're going to have to deal with my issues too, right? We all have baggage. Divorced, not divorced, married, it doesn't matter. Like, people are like, oh, don't marry divorced people, they have baggage. You all have baggage, right? We all do. So Um, I love what you were mentioning, like how do you actually practically, um, figure out who that, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, how do you assess somebody's deen and somebody's character in that
Yes.
rishta period or that courting period?
Yes. So just sort of observing, not like you're watching like a weirdo, but like observing their behavior outside of you, along with you, right? Go to their house, meet their family, hang out, watch how he or she interacts with the rest of their family. Watch how they conduct themselves, right? Are they, are they doing the things that you value, that are important to you, Are they having conversations with you? So something, for example, that can happen, and I don't know if this is an old school like Arab thing even, when the men are around, the women get ignored sometimes. And if you don't want that kind of dynamic, then you got to see if that's there. I can't talk to like Desi culture too much. I don't know too much like that
I
deep.
can.
I know the food and the chai, but like I don't know like the issues like deeply. But you can fill in your own blank. What sensitivities do you have and why? Of course, that's something you want to look into. Like, are these valid sensitivities to begin with, or are they something you're triggered by because of your own issue? Which then you can talk to someone through. But interacting with them and seeing how they interact with the world. How even, subhanAllah, you guys, like, there's a reason you guys are all here. And like, mashallah, one of the best things I think about our time, I miss the 90s a lot. I miss no cell phones. I miss the simplicity. I miss like the problems we had, right? It was just like, are your kids dating? Are they taking drugs? That's it, right?
Yeah.
There was no, it's like spiced up like crazy right now, right? I miss a lot of the stuff from the 90s. But something I don't miss and I love about our time, people are more self-aware. So when you're talking to this person, do they listen to you? Because that's good character, right? And it promotes connection and it promotes a sense of respect and safety and security. That's one of the most important things, subhanAllah. I wasn't even thinking about the ayah. That is literally one of the most important things in a marriage. Men need to feel safe emotionally with women. Women need to feel safe emotionally with men. I feel like we all believe that about the women, but we kind of forget about the men. Men use the term like, I feel disrespected. But that's a form of feeling unsafe in the relationship. And so they close off and they shut down. Same thing with women. If women feel judged or unheard or whatever, women will shut down and pull back, and then it creates distance, subhanAllah. So when it comes to religion, religion isn't just, as Brother Naveed was saying, it's not just about the practical practices. It's not about just salah, zakah, hajj. All those things are foundational. You want those to be there. After that, what does our life look like together? What do you want it to look like? Do you want to go to these classes together? Do you want that person coming with you to the masjid? If they're like, no, I'm really not interested in that, you have to make a decision. Am I okay with that or not? Right? And a lot of times your family will say, it's fine because he has a good job. She's a good girl. She comes from a good family. And they will push kind of you to be okay with things that you really have to decide on your own. Are you okay with that lifestyle? Because it becomes a lifestyle, right? Religiously, is this someone who reflects deeply? I'm going to assume everyone in this room are people who reflect. People who spend time reflecting, whether it's on the Quran or Hadith, or reflecting on their life, reflecting on who they are, who they should be, what they should be doing, what's meaningful to them. Not everyone does this. You want to marry someone who's doing it close enough to as much as you're doing it, right? And that's a deen thing, right? The end of the marriage ayah that's going to be on your wedding card, inshallah, is in this are signs for those who reflect, right? We hear about reflection, deep reflection, tadabbur in the Quran a lot. Allah does not want us just like, oh, what's next? Oh, I don't know. Just like kind of wandering on this earth and not knowing where we're going, right? So that's part of deen. Part of deen is that time that people are spending reflecting on themselves, reflecting on Allah. Who are they and who is Allah and where am I going and what am I doing and what is the meaning, right? So I would even extend, like you were saying, it's not just about the practices, it's about the depth. It's about the reflection. It's about the time that and the approach and the mindset behind, behind the deen. There are plenty people, and you guys could probably think of, maybe certain lecturers who you don't enjoy listening to because there isn't a lot of emotional or psychological connection to what they're saying. It kind of feels bland or just like very like mechanical. I lived in Amman, Jordan, when I was almost 14. I lived there for 4 years. Any of your parents do this where they're like, we're gonna go overseas because it's better for the kids? Did anyone? No, just me with the trauma? Okay. That's fine, I'll take it for everybody. But no, alhamdulillah, there were things that were amazing about it and I also hated it very much. So it was both. But going there, subhanAllah, oh my God, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, going to Jordan?
Yeah, what did I say right before that? Haram, it's okay if you don't remember. Yeah.
The depth of somebody's reflections.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. All of those pieces help. Thank you. So I was in a private school there because I was in 8th grade. So I was like, I could have technically gone into like the Arabic speaking system and it would have been really, really hard, but I didn't want to do that. So my parents put me in a British school where I took everything in English. And I remember we took religion. There was Islamic studies there. And my Islamic studies teacher wore hijab. The other one didn't. So like this is the kind of school I was in. If any of you are familiar with private schools overseas, very secular, like not religious at all. And I remember taking Islamic studies with her, and it was taught like a math class. It was just information. And I wasn't used to this because I'm coming from like universal school in Bridgeview, where our Islamic studies teachers were like, and Allah, He loves you, and you want to go to Jannah because it's beautiful, and just like really, I'm just like, I need to go to this place, They pulled us in. Islamic studies was life here. In Jordan, it was math, science, Islamic studies. It was so dry, there was no heart. And so even in that area, you want to make sure Islamically there's compatibility, that there's enough heart on both sides, that your hearts can speak to each other on these matters, inshallah.
And when it comes to assessing somebody's religion, Umar radiallahu an said that you will not know somebody until you live with them, you travel with them, or you do business with them. Right? So when it comes to assessing somebody, who is this guy? Who is this girl? The first place that we should turn to is the people that lived with them, the people that traveled with them, and the people that do business with them. And so this idea of looking into somebody's background is very important, right? Talk to their friends, talk to their family, talk to their neighbors, talk to their business associates, talk to the people that they lived with in undergrad. That's a really good place, right? If you had roommates in undergrad, like I did, those are the people to ask about who I am and what type of person I am. Visiting their house, as sister said, if you are a clean freak and you go to this person's house and their house is a mess, good luck with that, right? Your house is probably going to be a mess, right? So being able to go a layer deeper about what your preferences are and coming up with creative ways to figure that out, right? And the best thing, don't be shy to talk to people that they know. And in Islam, it is our duty that we do need to disclose, right? We don't have this concept of course there's backbiting, but when it comes to marriage, the rules are a little different, right? If somebody approaches you and says, hey, I know you lived with brother so-and-so, or you lived with sister so-and-so, my sister, or I'm thinking about marriage, can you tell me about them? This is the time for full disclosure, right? We need to look out for each other. And these are the avenues for us to connect, right? And a lot of times what happens is that when we're looking into somebody, or our parents are looking into somebody, we tell them, no, don't pry too hard. Don't ask around because then word's gonna get out. This is the time to do that filtration. This is the time to do that assessment and talk to those people who they've lived with, they've traveled with, and that they've done business with. And you see a lot of successful marriages coming out of MSA, right? The Marriage Student Association, mashallah. Well, why though? And it's not a bad thing. I think it's a beautiful thing, right? Because this is a avenue for you to learn about somebody from a distance, right? You get to see how they interact with other people. You see how they practice their deen. You see how they do in school. You see how they interact with teachers. And this is such a great avenue for us to figure out what somebody's all about. If you look at the shura, especially at UIC, or I'm sure any MSA, so many people get married. And for some reason, we've kind of made that a negative thing. But I think that's a very positive thing, that the marriages that come through that natural interaction, or just seeing somebody and seeing them over again in school or wherever it may be, that is a really good way for us to assess somebody's religion and somebody's character. And so I guess understanding, okay, what do we need to look for? We know what we need to look for. How do we assess somebody's religion? But now we have kind of this cultural baggage, right? Like in the Desi world, Hyderabadi hona chahiye, chai banana, whatever, like the different things they have to do from a particular cultural standpoint. But how do we balance what Islam says about what to look for and the positive and the negative aspects of culture that tell us what to look for in a spouse?
I think Islam frees us from a lot of our cultural stuff. A lot of cultural stuff is amazing, right? There's beautiful things about every culture, and there's messed up things about every culture. The beautiful thing about Islam is it allows us to practice these cultural practices unless they're against Islamic teachings. But Islam comes in sharp, makes sure it doesn't go out of line. So it's important to, number one, always keep Islam number one. When you are considering people, when you're talking to people, when you're thinking about life with them, what it might look like, Islam is number one. And I know, growing up, my mom, she would always tell me, I don't care what people say. And I know that's a broad statement, because we do care what people say. I'm not saying, go do dumb things and whatever, But for her, ultimately, what mattered to my mom, and she taught this to us, is worry about what Allah thinks of you. That's number one. So whether it's looking to get married, or after you get married, or after you have children, every single stage of our life, there's tests for how we perform in front of Allah. I think it was Tariq Muslih who said, I don't know who it was, that perform as if Allah is your only audience member, right? And even sometimes we do a good deed. I tell kids, younger children, I'm it's you do something and then you're looking at your mom to see if she saw you, and you're just yeah, I picked that up and it was on the floor, and it's sadaqah, and whatever. That's how we should be, little kids in front of Allah, yeah, I was angry, but I didn't yell at her, and I did good, and So we should be performing in front of Allah. And I think that the more we are in touch with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're more in touch with ourselves, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَلَا تَكُونُوا أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ. Don't be like those who forgot about Allah and they forgot about themselves. The more we are in touch with ourselves, and we are in touch with ourselves because we know who Allah is, the more we are able to bring that into our marriage, right? So, yeah.
What the kind of piggybacking on that cultural issue is marrying somebody from quote unquote back home. I have my opinion, but I'd like to hear your opinion first about maybe our parents are pushing us to marry somebody out of the country, from back home, quote unquote. Do you see that? I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, so let's separate them. So one is marrying, generally considering someone from back home, and the other one is being pressured. So some people are absolutely not, Fob Town, blah, blah, blah. My suggestion for that is the same for anything, person by person basis. Because there will be plenty of people from back home that are not compatible with you, simply because they're from back home. They're amazing people, you're an amazing person, but together it's not working, right? Or it wouldn't work. But you won't know until you talk to them. You won't know. You can't assume that everyone is the same because, they're from a certain place. There are many marriages that work great and they're mixed in that sense. And then there are marriages that don't work great. But there are people who have your accent in English, right? The American accent or whatever, and you guys might hate each other because your mindset is different. The way you look at the world is different, right? There is not enough compatibility. So I would say number one, be open to people who are from overseas, no matter how long they've been over there. I know sometimes it's scary if they need a visa or not. You have to be careful. I'm not even gonna mess with that. You have to be careful. But there are amazing people who happen not to have visas right now, right? There might be 1 out of 10, I don't know. But to me, it's always like, do I wanna miss out on someone because of these, rules that we have? The other thing is, age. Since we're on the topic of like being open, we all have numbers in our heads, right? She has to be, nothing less than like, she can't be, especially when you talk to Arab moms, they always want the woman to be like 10 years younger. Like, we want her to have a lot of children, okay? And it's like, dude, like, they'll be fine. Even if she's older, give the mom a heart attack, right? Like, even if she's older, don't nitpick on the age. Don't nitpick, because again, if you knew someone, and you're like, wow, that's an amazing person, I would totally consider them for marriage, because you know them through some means, and let's say they're not available or something, but you're like, someone like that, I would totally consider, even if they were older. The only reason you feel that way, if you do, is because you know them. So opening that door to people, as long as there's nothing haram coming in, there's nothing shady or weird, or nothing excessively that you cannot handle, I would say be open to considering them. And then when you talk to them and they're too overseas-ish for you, you tried, then say no. Then say no. Even if that's the only thing that's bothering you, it is still, at that point, it's okay to say no still. You're not a scumbag. But I would say don't say no just off the bat without ever even talking to them, especially if they have a lot of the other qualities that you're looking for. If your parents are pressuring you, come to the sheikh, try to figure that out, because those are complicated situations. I would say the thing to do with parents is talk to them, stand your ground to some degree, but be open to saying, okay, I will consider people. Of course, this is up to you. This is just my suggestion. I'm open to considering them. If I don't like them, I'll just say no. And that might be a nice compromise for your parents even, and help them, get through this process. But I think if they're forced, like pushing that you need to say yes to someone for any reason, whether, anything, that's when you just have to hold your ground and say no. Another thing a lot of people are pressured into is like, okay, that's enough talking. You need an answer right now. And my answer for that is always tell them I need more time. If they can't wait, ma'as salama, it's okay. But then we're not compatible enough. Even if you can't just wait, then I can't, unless you're like on like year 2 and you're still thinking about it, then I'll say like, I think you're the problem, right? But I'm kidding, you're not the problem, you're amazing. But no, like if it's a reasonable, like if you've only been talking for, people have told me so many times, like, we talked 4 times and my dad is saying give an answer. It's 4 times. 4 times you're talking to somebody and maybe an hour each, 4 hours, and you have to decide if this person is gonna be great for your iman, for your akhirah, for your children, if you're gonna be good for them. Because they could be great for you and you're like, and you're awful for them, compatibility-wise, right? You don't want that. It's not fun. It won't be good and it won't be happy. So, subhanAllah, I think that openness of, let's not even restrict ourselves. Let's go based on the Islamic rules. They have to be Muslim. They have to have the basic stuff of Islam, and then all the things that the Prophet ﷺ told us. And then from there, do I like him? Do I like her? Is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Right? Yeah.
How do we balance what our parents want versus what we want?
Wait, what's your thing about overseas-ish?
Okay, so I don't know if you know, but I'm a divorce attorney. And there's a statistic, something that we've seen in our own firm, is that the divorces between couples where one person is from here and one person from overseas, those divorces actually end up being more expensive because there's more fighting. So again, I'm not trying to discount this. I think we should be open to looking at people from wherever they may be from, but we have to understand that the values, the way that you grew up, the way that you view the world is very important in marriage. And a lot of times we think that, oh, they're from the same village as I was or my parents were, so therefore we're going to be compatible. But if you grew up listening to Backstreet Boys and they grew up listening to something different, you may not be compatible. And so what I would say when it comes to international marriages is to really, really, really do your homework, right? And the homework becomes a little harder, right? Just taking somebody's word that somebody is good may not be all that you need to do. So you might have to do a little bit more work to assess how this person is if you are marrying internationally. So that was kind of my take. I know it's a little different from your take, but I'm just seeing it from the back end of how these marriages work. Because even out-of-state marriages, right? Again, we should look at out-of-state marriages, but that component of being able to see how this person was brought up, who their friends are and things like that, that becomes a little bit more limited. And so we need to take extra precautions and extra due diligence when we are marrying somebody from out of state or from out of the country. So that was my controversial take.
No, that sounds very reasonable, actually. It's beautiful because you're still not saying do or don't.
Yes, yes.
You're just saying here's something to think about.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of like, if something is a little bit more complicated, then you need to do more work
Yes.
to make sure it's safe and good. I love that idea. It's like, instead of just saying no to it, no, now you just do a little bit more work to see
Yes.
if it's going to work, you know?
Yeah, and to the question of how to balance what we want versus what our parents want, you know, we have to be careful not to become extremists, right? Where what I say goes, and I'm not going to listen to anything that my parents say. Or the other way that, oh, mom, dad, you pick my person, I don't care, you know, they could be whoever you bring, right? We have to make sure that there's balance in the way that we address that situation, right? Our parents want the best for us. There's no doubt about that. Our parents have gone through a 20, 30, 40-year marriage. They understand the difficulties. They've raised children. They've gone through hardship, right? They've gone through the ups and downs. And so there's a lot of value that our parents bring when it comes to looking at a spouse, right? It doesn't have to be a doctor or some, you know, big baller necessarily, but at the under end, if this guy doesn't have a job and, you know, I don't want to give an example, but he's doing whatever he's doing, okay, again, we got to find that balance. And so I guess my point on this is not to discount what our parents want. It may be that they say, okay, marry somebody from our town or from our village. Just because they say that, I wouldn't say just knock it out, right? Maybe there's something behind that they're thinking. Maybe they're thinking about the values. Maybe they're thinking about the culture. You know, adab is very important in this regard. The way that I feel respected may be very different than the way somebody else feels respected. And that's a lot of cultural implications are behind that, right? My culture says, for example, every time you walk in the room, you say assalamu alaikum. In somebody else's house or in somebody else's village, or maybe that's not a requirement. So I don't want us, or I should talk to myself first and foremost, not to discount entirely what our parents are advising us to do, or the rishtas, or the way of approaching that and what type of job they come from and the background that they come from. I think it's very important to take that into consideration. We're running out of time, and so I really want to, kind of turn our attention to how to find a spouse, right? We talked about the apps. You know, you mentioned that it's picture first. And so instead of assessing compatibility first, we're assessing beauty first. And so what is a better way for us to find a spouse? Or is there alternative ways? Or what other solutions do we have? I know everybody here, or many people here, want to get married, right? But it's just so hard to find somebody who's compatible, somebody who fits in, somebody that they can vibe with. How can we find somebody?
I think in terms of a practical, here's a way to do it, I don't have anything new to offer in terms of like, either you're on a list with some auntie, right? And she's calling and sending people over, trying to hook people up, or you're on an app, or you're in the MSA, or you're working in the masjid, or you're at work work, and you have a colleague who you're, interested in. What I would say is basically what I've been saying like this from the beginning of this talk is adjust your attitude. The means are all there. I can't think of any other ones. I would love to come up with new ways, right? I have I've only gotten one person in my life married, one of my friends. That's it. And I'm just like, me and my husband are miserable at this. We are not good at sending people over. We barely send anyone over because we don't know anyone. And then when we do, it doesn't work all the time. So it's only worked once. Until now, when I see her, I'm like, you're welcome, right? So it's really hard. It is very challenging. It's very frustrating. And it can feel very hopeless at times, especially, I think, for either side. As you're getting a little older, it can become very like, when and is this even going to happen? And I would say a few things to that. So number one, I'm going to focus a little bit on attitude. Number one, like I said earlier, when you're on these apps, be open and go for it. Go for it and then say no. The guys a lot of times I think are worried to hurt someone's feelings. You're not doing anyone a favor by not giving them a chance, or yourself. Do them a favor and yourself a favor. Give them a chance. Even after one time you're not interested, don't ghost them because it's so rude. But just say, I don't think this is a good idea. She's going to feel bad, 100%. But it's okay. It is okay. You are more likely to find someone by doing this respectfully and kindly and with the right intention. And inshallah, you're making your pool wider. Same thing for the sisters. Sisters are not innocent of looking at the pictures as well, right? And sometimes it's like, no, too short, to this, to that, whatever. And it won't matter if you like them. It's not even that it won't matter. I want to rephrase that because I don't want people to think that you're going to like them, but you're still going to be like not liking how they look. You will love how they look if you love them. If you feel connection with them, if you feel loved by them, their personality is compatible with yours, you will love how they look. You will be attracted to them. So same thing for the sisters. Don't just look at the pictures. I would even say, don't even just look at what they wrote. Everyone sounds the same on these apps. Everyone sounds like, yeah, I pray, I go to the masjid, LOL. It's like everyone says the same things, right? No offense to anyone who's on there. What is it?
Yeah, love to travel.
Yeah.
Walks on the beach, yeah.
Exactly, right? And it's amazing, But what I'm saying is good. When you see that, think, okay, maybe they're not a psycho. Great. Let me see what else is there, right? So I would say approach these things differently. They're already there. Ask yourself, am I doing this effectively? Am I using this platform effectively? Same thing with aunties who want to send people over. Let them come over. Let divorced people come over. It's okay. Even if you don't like the idea initially. Because if you know someone, if it was a family friend who got divorced and you love them, they're amazing, these people are awesome, and they got divorced, I bet you $100 without really betting, because it's haram, that you would consider them. Why? Because you know them. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. So those are two things. The third thing I would say, do not put your life on hold, but do not go crazy about it. So here's what I notice with sisters particularly, not because brothers don't necessarily, I don't know if brothers do this, but when I'm interacting with sisters, I see this thing, it's like a yo-yo effect of this whole situation where, okay, you know what? I'm going to focus on getting married. I'm going to do this. I'm going to accept people. I'm going to, look on these apps or whatever. And they go for a while, and then they get to a point where it's feeling frustrating. They're not finding anyone. Maybe they're having bad experiences, whether people are weird or they're ghosting them or they feel rejected or whatever. And then what do? You know what? Forget this. I'm just going to focus on my career. I'm just going to focus on my education. I'm just going to focus on whatever. What I'm saying is be careful not to fall into this all or nothing trap. Continue living your life fully, married or not. Your career is not your escape. It's just a part of you. It's not like I don't need a man, I have my own money. It's not about that. It's not about that. Every single woman in the world could work and she wouldn't need a man. She could work. She can get a full-time job and have money for herself. That's not a question, right? But it's more about my career is a part of me. My marriage is a part of me, even if it isn't there yet. My social life is a part of me. My ibadah is a part of me, and my Islam is a part of me. My health is a part of me. My workouts, my exercise, the fun things I do. Maybe you like pottery, whatever hobbies you like to do. Engage in your life fully as much as you possibly can, whether you have found someone or not. Be careful not to become bitter. You have not found someone. Yes, we have a situation culturally or like in our ummah. We have a problem, and we have to figure out a better way to do things so that the next generations are not waiting very long. Because I don't like it, people don't like it, it feels awful. It really does. So that's something we have to deal with as a community. But in the meantime, protect yourself from bitterness, from anger, from too much sadness. You could be sad about it. It's okay. It's part of life, and it's something you want, and it's a natural need. It's okay to be sad. It's okay for you to feel like something's missing. That's okay. But we don't want that to become our whole life. We don't want it to consume us. And if you're not married yet, it's because Allah didn't want it to happen. And as hard as it is to accept sometimes, it's for us to accept it makes the situation easier. Gaza has been a test for me. And I notice and I feel like a lot of people may agree with, not agree, but can relate to this. It's been difficult to, and I don't mean this in a blasphemous way, I mean it on an emotional level. It's been hard to swallow that this has been going on for this long, right? It's just like, Ya Allah, please let it, please, Ya Allah, just please let it stop. It's been too devastating for all of us. But this is what was meant to happen. And that pain that we feel, the guilt that we feel because we're surviving and we're flourishing here, all the difficulty, the trauma that we all feel from watching these images that are not normal to see, this was meant for us to experience. So to accept our qadar, whatever parts of it we like and whatever parts of it we don't. How beautiful is it that arkan al-iman, the 6 pillars of faith, the last one is that you believe in qadar, the good of it and the bad of it. Allah is validating that we are not going to like all of our qadar. We're not going to like it. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be painful. We're going to wish every moment that it was different. Ya Allah, I don't mind problems, but could you just get rid of like 3 of mine that I can't stand? Could you just switch them up with something else? We want other problems, right? How many of you guys can relate to this? I'm putting my hand up, right? So Allah validates our humanity by setting up those six pillars of iman by saying sharrihi wa khairihi, the good and the bad. So to us, to those of you who are still looking and striving and working so hard and being open and doing your best, and it's so difficult because it's vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there. You're sitting with people. You're having the conversations are so difficult. I can't tell you how many times people have come to my house, and sometimes it was like after 3 minutes, I'd be like, okay, do you have any more questions? Okay, I'm gonna go get my dad now. And I would run, right? I'd be like, Bob, come on. Bob is short for Baba. So I'd call my dad, I'd be done. It was horrible. It was so difficult. And then you go and then you just have to live your life and you're waiting for this thing to happen. It's not easy. But if it has not happened, it is part of your qadar. And to focus and work on, Ya Allah, even verbalizing it, right? Visualizing it, right? If we're gonna go into coaching and psychology. Visualizing on the day of judgment that we come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something my friend shared with me. She said that I want to go to Allah on the day of judgment. And when He's asking me how you responded to certain things I tested you with, I want to be like, I was okay with it, even though I wasn't. I accepted it, even though it was difficult. So we can accept qadar and still be hurt by it. Because it's bad. It feels bad. It's okay. So to acknowledge that those two things can happen at the same time will liberate our hearts just a little bit. It'll give us some space, and believe it or not, it will give us ease. Because even if you look at the cycle of grief, the stages of grief, acceptance comes later. But when acceptance comes, and this is the last thing I'll say, it's kind of like, like when you're at the dentist or you're at the doctor's office and they're doing something, if they're checking your arm or whatever, your teeth or whatever, and something hurts. How many of you guys, you don't have to put your hand up, but so many times people will say, is it supposed to hurt? If they say yes it is, what do? Okay, I'll deal with it. Then you might take Tylenol, but you're not freaking out. You accept the pain because it's supposed to be there, right? Like childbirth. No one's like, someone call 911 because this pain is weird. No, yeah, call 911 because you got to go to the hospital. But the pain is not scary. It's part of the process, so you're not freaking out. It's just painful, right? So it's similar. Our qadr that we don't love, although it's painful, it is acceptable. It is game. And that's why we always ask Allah, Ya Allah, please take away things that are difficult for me. And Ya Allah, whatever is difficult, what is the dua, you guys? Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla. Ya Allah, nothing is easy except that which you make easy. Wa anta taj'al al-hazna. He picked hazna, right? Prophet ﷺ said this, but this is inspiration. He says, and you make sadness easy, if you will. You guys, in du'as is the validation of our humanity. In du'as, you will find the validation of your humanity. We ask Allah, these are prophetic du'as. We ask Allah to protect us from jealousy, from miserliness, from all these horrible things. Why did the Prophet say this? Alayhi salatu wassalam. Our Islam and our dua, the Quran, is a validation of our humanity. We just have to accept. Allah accepts our humanity. The funky, the good, the weaknesses, the imperfections, He accepts it. He tells us how to deal with it. He gives us repentance. He gives us guidance. He tells us that our hearts are between His fingers, right? And we freak out. We're like, oh my God, I'm a bad Muslim. I wasn't paying attention in dhuhr, right? Allah knows. Our job is just to keep coming back. Just, I strayed off a little bit, coming back. Yep.
Alhamdulillah, I know everybody wants to get to Vasco, so I'll just have one last question, inshallah. So I'm going to, inshallah, address the brothers, and you can address the sisters. But the question is, how can we approach women if we're interested, or how can women approach men if they're interested? And maybe some tips, right? Some game tips, right? When it comes to guys, what I would say is that we need to make sure that we have some charisma. There's so many guys who don't know how to talk. I'm being serious here. We don't know how to talk, right? Because the way that we talk has an impression on our future spouse, right? Again, I'm not talking about flirting. I'm not talking about game. I'm not talking about sending a pickup line on Muzz, right? I'm talking about when you actually meet somebody that you're able to have a conversation, a respectful conversation, be able to express yourself, be able to talk about whatever that person may be interested in. So definitely develop your ability to speak. I think that's very important. Number 2, look good, right? I'm being honest. This guy's, man, mashallah. This guy's freaking out. Keep your beard nice. Wear some nice clothes. Keep up with the style. Brush your teeth. Stop playing video games all day. Maybe go to the gym. And these types of things, and I know we're all laughing about it, but I'm being really serious here because there's a very big lack of this type of guy in this day and age, right? A refined gentleman. That's what we need to become. We need to become refined gentlemen. And if we do finally see a sister that we are interested in, there's so many different avenues to approach it, right? Talking to one of their friends, talking to one of their siblings, being a man and actually reaching out to that sister's father or their uncle or some other connection, right? And again, that's going to come with that confidence. That ability to speak and having that confidence is going to help you get married, and it's going to help that sister to actually be attracted to you. So those are my tips to the brothers here. when it comes to how to approach a woman and how we can kind of prepare ourselves from a practical way on becoming a better pick. I'm sorry for being so raw, but those are my 2 cents. And sister, if you have any advice for our sisters in terms of if they see a man that they're interested in, they want to get married. I know we shun this idea very often that, oh, women shouldn't approach men, but what are your thoughts on that, and what tips do you have to help our sisters approach somebody that they're interested in?
Number one, also brush your teeth. I think everyone should brush their teeth. That's just my opinion.
That's a great idea.
That's my opinion, yeah. No, first of all, I love what you asked the brother. Like, those are, like, I love that you even address, because those are such guy things to address. I would never think, listen, you know, that was really, really awesome. And if I could just add something to the last thing you said, I think one thing I really miss from the 90s that I really think you guys should bring back is approaching the father. Like, and I've heard this many times where the guys are like, but it's awkward. And I'm like, I throw up in my mouth when I hear that. Why? Like Brother Naveed said, it is very masculine to be okay with rejection.
Yes.
I prefer you guys to deal with the rejection over the girls. So anytime I'm in the middle of, like, you know, like I'm the middle person between people, I don't let the girls know anything as far as I can. I don't tell, if I can get a picture without her knowing, if I can get her information without her knowing, and I send it over to the guy, I want him to see first to see if he's interested, because I don't want her to get that reject. I want to minimize how much they get rejected, because you guys are men. And so for me, a huge part of it is go to the father. The father says no. The girl says no. I would rather you guys pick up that weight than the girls. Does that make sense? Okay. Jazakallah khair. For the sisters, I think be the type of person you want to attract. If you want someone practicing with good adab, then that's what you can mirror. Because you will attract someone who, on both sides, you will attract what you put out there. And not, again, not in a weird way. But if someone, you know, if you want someone who's, I don't know, I can only think of one example that I don't think is great to give. I'm just going to leave it general like that. Be who you want to attract. You want someone who's God-fearing, who lowers their gaze, lower your gaze. You want someone who doesn't interact with girls a lot, don't interact with boys a lot. Unnecessarily meaning, not like, you know, you don't have to like hide and stuff. But the unnecessary stuff, which we all know what that is, right? Anything that has to, you know, okay, we're done here, we're done. Assalamu alaikum, adios, we're done. So be the type of person you want to attract, because that type of person will then notice that you are doing what they are doing as well. And not only will that perhaps invite that type of person to come for you, but then you can also, you know, see, you know, be that person so that it makes sense in the end. And then go Khadija style, radiallahu anha, right? You can go tell a friend. And even honestly, if you work with them in the MSA, a short email, I'm interested for you to come see my father so we could consider marriage. The end. Right? Short and
Guys
sweet.
would die for that.
What's that?
I said guys would love that.
Yeah. Really or no?
No, they would.
Oh, okay. I thought they saw the word father and they're like, forget this. I'm not doing this. Okay. So yeah, it's okay to do. There's nothing haram about that. You literally open up the door for them to come pursue this, possibly Islamically. Ahla sahla. It's great, right? Talk to people around you. Don't be shy about it, right? Talk to people that you know that, yeah, when you know, like, oh, are you married yet? I'm sure you guys love that question, right? And you're like, no, thank you for reminding me. But you'd say no. And I remember when I was looking to get married, I'm like, no, but I'm looking. If you have anyone, send them over. I don't care what they thought. I did not care. I'm like, I'm single. You're not going home with me. I'm home alone. Like, I'm without my husband. So someone send me a husband, right? So don't be shy about it. Just, you know, be direct and be open, and inshallah, you know, that could just open up your pool just a little bit more, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, jazakumullah khairan to all of you for attending. We really appreciate the time that you've taken out to address us. You know, if, mashallah, if any of the sisters have any questions for Sister Amany, I'm sure she's open to answering questions and things like that. Next week, inshallah, we have Qari No'man and Sheikh Abdul Nasser Jangda. So please come and tell your friends. It's going to be a beautiful session on the marriage of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and how to have this conversation with your parents about marriage. Again, we have a link tree, and on the link tree we have a Slido, so you can enter your questions. And as we mentioned earlier, our last event will be a panel, a Q&A panel, where we'll try to address those questions. Please keep us in your du'as. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.